Hey, folks, this is Rabble Rousing Rich Bergeron.
Ladies and gentlemen, the tornado is going to pick up. So I can contact it with your crystal ball polish and shiny.
Oh, man. I used the crystal ball last weekend because I came close, but not close enough on a bunch of bets. But the big one was came down to the final fight. Yeah. Well, I predicted that one wrong with one fight at least. With Deontay Wilder, I gave him a chance that I shouldn't have, obviously, and we'll get into that fight a little bit later on, but one thing I was super pissed about is Deontay Wilder fought like he didn't have a right hand anymore. Like he forgot he even had one. He could only throw a left for some reason. And his jab was working pretty decently at times, but without the fucking right hand behind it, it was kind of useless. So, I mean, I was just like, what the hell is wrong with this dude? Like, you think he can.
He's getting rid of Mark Wheeler.
Yeah.
I
You know,
didn't
the most basic combination in boxing is the 1-2, and he did look like he didn't know how to ever throw one in that fight. Yeah,
between the three of us, we've been rebels. I mean, we went.
yeah, yeah. And it was kind of
They had a video.
it was kind of interesting too that the fight with Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa at the UFC card was the same deal with Strickland. He forgot about his right hand. He hardly ever threw it, and he won though. He won. Yeah. Yeah.
That Steven Strickland was thinking that yeah, how about Dave Torelli? Now that name seems sounds familiar. I think there's been one or two other ones. Dave Torelli, the judge that had Oscar winning
Oh, judging was horrible, horrible in
yeah,
that card.
I just said yeah. They win it, but if I were the constituent this thing, Torelli would have an appointment with me on Monday morning.
Yeah.
Torelli, the same, didn't judge those rounds that represented reasoning.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it was him, but there was another split decision in the first fight of the night where he had Mitch Raposo winning. And Andre Lima pretty much dominated that fight. I mean, there was real no action from Raposo at all to warrant him winning. Never mind a single round. The whole fight, no. No, not at all. Yeah. Well, no, there still is. They still do have boxing judges. I think one was on this card. Um, I forget. Yeah. Right. Yep. Well, I went through all the expert videos and everything like that, and it came down to one final bet, that was coming up to the main event, and I had under 2.5 rounds for the main event, unfortunately, and it went five. Well, most of them. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Poirier, Poirier, I think had a chance to win on decision if it went the full distance, but he just, this is, yeah, yeah,
You know,
basically.
the underdog, like
I felt bad for him.
the
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was deep. Like he is an expert at keeping the rear naked choke off in the grappling exchanges. Like he just had so much expertise with turning the right way and getting the arm off and occupying the other arm. Like he knew all the tricks. And the only
yeah,
way Makachev was able to get it was in the transition from the standing to the ground. And it was just it was almost a fluke, you know. It just came to him, and he wrapped it up so quickly. Poirier didn't have even any time to offer up a defense. So obviously it was deep, you know, and like it was. Even though I had already lost the bet, you know, I was just like devastated for him. And then they show him leaving the octagon, and he kisses his daughter, and she wipes the blood off her face. I don't know if you noticed that, but I was like, oh man, that's gotta suck for the whole family to have to do that, you know, walk out of there like that. When he was so close. Yeah. I think he'll fight again, and I mean, Makachev should give him a rematch, but the UFC just doesn't work that way. You know, it's not like boxing, and he doesn't even want to stay at that weight. Makachev is talking about going up a weight to get another title. So yeah, yeah. So let's see. Yeah. Well, I don't necessarily think he's going to be in a title picture again, but he has to have one more fight to go out on a positive note. You can't have a career like that and go out on a loss. You just can't. Yeah, yeah. And he actually got injured in one of the best moves of the fight when he pulled a switch, as they call it in wrestling, and he tore his ACL in that fight. So that's going to be a long recovery. I don't see him coming back this year if he does come back. Probably next year. Right. Yeah. I can't even get my 30-year-old body. Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, at best, though, I mean, if you're going to leave on that note, um, he can always say it was a war, just like he wore the hat into the ring, into the cage, saying war on it, and it was really epic. Um, very entertaining. Probably the closest to a knockout we really got all night, because there was no knockouts on this entire card, which is kind of crazy because they debuted the new gloves. I wonder if that was a factor in that. But Makachev was busted up. Poirier hit some elbows on him, cut his head open, and it was getting ugly at the end and bloody. Um, I mean, he had the wrestling. He trained, I guess, with Mateus Gamrot, who is a phenomenal wrestler, and that's how he got so good at the takedown defenses. But there was a couple times he did end up on the ground on his back, fighting off submissions, and that really drained some of his energy. But once he was on the feet in his comfort zone at range, he was really looking better than I thought he would. Because I honestly was just betting on him because of the moment, like, oh, this is like his last chance. He's gonna be fighting like a bat out of hell, and it's just, I mean, he had the energy and the technique, but he didn't execute 100% perfectly, which no fighter really does. But I think
Yeah.
Makachev got more lucky than anything to get that choke. You're Amish? They thought he was Amish. Oh my God. Oh. You know how they do those, they do these things online, they call them memes. That would be a great meme, Makachev in Amish costume. He's leaving MMA to go back to TVs. There's a series. They had a whole series about the Amish Mafia. Remember that years ago? Well, he's gonna be training at the barn raising. Right. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. I'll never look at him the same way again. I'll do it now. I can do it myself. It won't be that hard. Anyway, I'll just have to figure something out to put as a tagline on it. That's all. The easy part is the editing. But anyway, co-main event was fairly boring. Even Sean Strickland apologized for how boring it was. But Paulo Costa somehow swayed one judge, as we were talking about. And he just looked like classic Paulo Costa. He's good for a couple rounds, and then he kind of falls apart with his gas tank. And Strickland is going to have an unlimited gas tank in any fight he's in. He's used to the 5 rounders. Paulo is just so inconsistent lately. Yeah, yeah, yep. Yo, yo, yeah. Yeah, against the right opponent, he's always been very good. But like once he's climbed to the top of the heap, he's facing difficulty. He's had 4 losses against top name guys. The lowest quality opponent, I guess, if you had to call him that, would be Marvin Vittori, who's no cheap date, as you like to say. Just And Luke Rockhold was his last win. It was not even in the second. Yeah, basically. I mean, that was a big win streak for him to start his career. That ended it after that with Adesanya. Mm, yeah. Well, I thought it was very smart to use the leg kicks like he did. I've always been a proponent of fighters needing to use leg kicks more in fights, no matter what kind of style the other fighter has. You want to take out that lead leg as soon as possible and just batter it. The problem was Sean was just working through it and checking it half the time. So and he didn't even really seem like it hurt. Like he wasn't even like walking tenderly on it, but he got a suspension because it was pretty beat up his leg. So yeah, yeah. Somebody I was watching Josh the Punk Thompson and John um, John McCarthy's podcast earlier today, and they were doing the UFC picks, and um, Josh was bringing up a technique he used to use with his heel, kicking the legs with his heel. And he used to do it in training so much that his trainer coach came up to him one day and said, "You got to stop doing that. You're hurting people." And that got me thinking, geez, that's another technique you don't see enough of. Um, and then there was another video I was watching with the John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast they did this week on the fights, and they were talking about kicks to the arms. Like if somebody has like a dominant hand that they throw a lot and they hurt people with, you kick that arm till they can't hold it up, or they can't use it at least. They might just be able to use it for defense, but nothing else. And I was like, wow, that's a great idea because the people have actually broken wrists with leg kicks that
Yeah.
are blocked. Like Randy Couture, I think, had that happen to him once. Um, don't remember exactly when, but Rich Franklin, I think. Yeah, he broke it. I think I call it the ulna in the arm, that bone.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, that's cool.
I haven't heard of that injury in a long time. Stuff for these guys to think about.
Think you're,
Well, another thing the UFC doesn't do a lot, other than rematches, is or immediate rematches anyway, is giving guys um, tune-up fights. Like once you get to a certain level, you just don't get tune-up fights anymore. If you're a big name that they think can sell tickets, they're not going to put you in against a pushover. Never. Even though a guy might need that to advance his career, and it's something that I think they did Chuck Liddell really dirty with at the end of his career. They didn't give him a single easy fight, and he kind of had a bad ending to a fabulous career because of it, because they just fed him to the lions, almost like they were pissed at him. But those aren't tune-ups, he's already tuned up. I'm talking about a guy who's been losing. You throw him in there with a guy he can beat, just to build his confidence. Yeah.
that thing is called off.
Hmm.
Cool, but I'm off of it.
Right. 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 Yep. Right. And Kevin Holland winning by submission in the 10th fight of the night. That was an armbar where he literally broke the arm. Yeah, and he didn't even want to break it, but like Herb Dean was like, nope, that's not enough. So he freaking broke it. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They didn't ban it or in the field like like them. So me and Buddy went down. They had a good day.
Hmm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that was a bad one. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Start to finish. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. There was a guy that used to write a lot about my Giant stories and stuff, like when I was in the lawsuit. And he's writing for something called the MMA Draw. It's like a newsletter now, Zach Arnold. He didn't write this article, but he's with this group, and somebody, I guess Nate Wilcox is the guy. He wrote this article. Donald Trump attends UFC 302, receives staggering ovation just days after guilty verdict in hush money trial. And it's really critical of the whole thing. Um, and he says, no, it's not necessarily that, but it's like he's he's kind of implying that the UFC is playing to their fan base who is mostly conservative. Like, I don't know where the guy gets that. Yeah, yeah. I don't even know where the guy gets that statistic though. Like, how just because you like fighting, you're conservative? Doesn't make sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. Well, he's not necessarily saying it was stupid of the UFC. He's really kind of saying that it's typical of the way the UFC does business. They try to, yeah. So this is how it starts. You'll love this. You'll love this opening to the article. He says, "You don't have to be a reactionary shitlib lost in a hysterical rage tizzy to be alarmed and to some extent baffled by WTF, what the fuck, obviously, the UFC thinks it's doing here. How can it be good for business to alienate the completely and rightly enraged majority of Americans who not only oppose Donald Trump but fear and loathe him?" And then he doesn't even say conservative. He says simply, the UFC's demo of young males leans extremely right wing. I think that's bullshit. That is total bullshit. That's a generalization you need to have proof for. Like you have to show a graph or a statistic or a poll. Like you just can't go out and say that. I learned that in fucking high school, running the school newspaper. You just don't do that. Yeah, yeah.
Wonder.
And then he says, the next brand that needs to cleanse itself of some cringy misstep, one that becomes the center of a manufactured right wing moral panic about woke ideology, will be willing to pay dearly to sponsor the UFC. Yeah.
I mean, you know, with his military for a while, when he was being out as a ultimate, well, you know, type of human being. And she was opposed to why they wanted to drink beer rather than pretty women. Pretty women, you know, women, you know, they, pretty women were better. Pretty women in land. And then he goes, pretty women make a beer. Ugly women make drink. Oh, what? He's pretty rough in real life. He's better dealing. Perfect. Now I haven't verified it. I would certainly follow with yeah.
Right. Right.
You know who else O'Neill was friends with Ruben Mancini.
He's a jiu-jitsu guy too. He does train in jiu-jitsu.
He was trying to like hide from people and everything. And then he was like, hey, you're always out like mingling with everything. Like, well, these people are understanding.
Mhm.
And then, why wouldn't I want to be, named Bruno Mancini? Said that later interviews, like she'd be playing to people would come up to him and they would say, "What's my or whatever," and he just moved the name. Well, you mean you you do not have the right to force your life to mine if
Right.
you so if you want to go out and eat red meat and go to like need to see is just breaking any law and doing now you let's say for example you go on with any chicken and if you're like any chicken you will go in and I have a cousin of mine and a cousin of me he liked the early 90s drunk music which I don't like it's never good we thought it was too sounding and too much of a people enjoyed it even when it was then in the early 90s and I'm gonna be like
Right.
hey, I have to fix and say, no, well, what the hell, man? Put me up, man. I'm like, you should have gone with me. You wouldn't enjoy it. Don't force me to go with you. I enjoy it. So, it makes it go. Yeah. I'm actually going down to looking. I'm doing the whole thing. Flying company is going to be there. So we're doing a big ALS awareness thing. The former CEO of my company. And so they were sponsoring it. Like, a friend of the son was actually going to land him. So I said, yeah, I'll go down to it. So then I come to find out that also Sunday was a big info. But it's an in here going down same Sunday was going down during the game. We leave at like 9 in the morning. They'd be getting on these teams and they'd be wearing their shit and all that and waving a flag. So you should have people talk in the afternoon. You can famous mentions. So I'm phones. Not one of them, and the reason I walked around Joey, she went family. I'm not business brother. Father, photo ride, not being great because that's the going Gary. Yes, you take a piece into the go to the goal, bring and we get to first family, big rainbow high castle, whatever that's first. No one goes, fired up. She went to work. My God! Right down to go down. You're tired. She gets out of bed. You know how much you take a picture because then like be going on any research. She's not funny, but she's gonna laugh.
Right?
So, things things that actually happened less than 9 hours ago. This is very much a current event. Now we know how much I'm working in this week, right? I've been so upset every day when I go into these. Like I walk by the desk to choose security event. Really, and every day I walk in, I either put my fingers together and my brain, bringing stuff. I mean, and then I came down and I saw him again and I said to my, some scared jokingly. And then I go back and I'm doing my job and all that. Like, man, the one, as I'm walking down to meet my friend in a little atrium, I see the other guy. So I walk over to him and I'm saying, I mean, she's right. That's how you do things. I mean, you think things smile and you make your little man. And I'm laughing about it. And there's one thing I'm like, they get along. But he is, every morning he goes and I'm going to go to the big ball piece of and, he looks like one of the guy, politics, race, religion, sexuality, anything. Right? And, so, I want to do the day to day. Uh, we, and he goes, security, these things, I just don't think And it's one, this guy right now. And you can see the guy looked like he was 350 pounds. He was hanging out, pretty clothes, really disabled like back. He went to a lunch, and this guy was, you know, when he's harassing people, giving them money or giving them food or what. So he goes up to Henry and he goes, give me some food. Henry goes, no. He said, give me some food. He goes, in his face. He goes, sorry, no. And Henry just took a sandwich from the lunch buddy. Tried to grab Henry's sandwich. And then Henry just broke free anyway. And then a little later, two talking, we had one kid, he's a Filipino on our team. Oh, you know what happened to Henry? And the kid wasn't working when he came in. He like, oh, me out. Doesn't matter. Especially if he's holding the sandwich in my right hand and he reaches his hand, he's chilling.
That's a mismatch if I ever heard of one. Mm. Yeah.
And all that. You have a mental mess.
Yep.
And 2 years ago, my friend, sister-in-law, brother, said, he's doing something, but he won't get his vacation. He gets real loud, real mountain.
Mm.
Very weird. Venus barely weighs 100 pounds. Real mountain. So we're over my house, and he's in the pool, and then he's going right now. Look at man. Yeah. And he goes, look, mom, come here. So you got to be in the mountain. Well, he turns me, he goes, what's right in there? There's me. And he jumps the down, and he puts his right hand, and he starts coming out. The liberator going down.
Mm.
He just threw a jerk. So I opened my hand at the end, where the yep. He walked right into it.
Mm.
And he was running a kind of fun. And then he didn't know what to do.
Mm.
He said, you know, in his mind, I reacted.
Right.
He said, well, you know? So he's like, me, the cat takes away, you know?
Mm.
But yeah, looking at that guy, said, you're right, you would have seen a very angry, then
Mm. Nice.
someone else said it. It's really, I mean, I enjoy this, but you take, I follow the Philadelphia very liberal newspaper. And then they have their headlines, which is always both slanted. And then they have a bunch of responses from people that are highly liberal and people that are highly conservative. They just, you just read them. Like, there's some people out there, and it's like, you know, I hope you're like a
Mm.
because like he's 27 years old, mental height, and then he has a job. Well, he's then going like that. I don't know. He's like, I don't believe the citizens should be allowed to own.
What?
So yeah, believe in socialism and communism and there's a lot of cool. And leave it over here. You go where they have it, and then you can want to things. So he disagrees with him. He's sort of the old man. You're going, there's or whatever, and I'm like, well, you know what I'm well, I'm on it. You want that to
Right.
yeah. Fight not afraid. They said internet has made it too comfortable to say things with kids. That's
Yeah, basically. Mike Simpson.
very true.
Yeah. But
You know, they now or anything like that. There's no problem saying the wait 2 years. You take that the mercy. And if I didn't have the do that, sure that they're
hmm,
staying behind the screen, shows it's really just cheap and basically
right. One thing I've noticed, there's a couple things actually, but first in the pop culture today, and Rocky Marciano's nephew that I just talked to last week, Louis Marciano Jr. was trying. Actually, called me. He wanted to talk to me personally because I said something about the movie. You know why there's no movie about Rocky that really does him justice. And so, of course, he's a conservative, and he says something like, "Well, there's no market for a straight white hero anymore in pop culture. Basically, it's you got to
not
have a gay angle or a transvestite angle or something like that to get people to buy anything now. And if you look around, like I saw it even on a freaking Home Improvement show the other day. There's a gay female couple doing the home improvement, and they actually won the contest for that episode. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Hey, if you want to do that, go ahead. But it's like literally, you're going to put it in our face, like all over the place. So it's almost like trying to convince everybody that it's hip to be gay now. It's not
yeah,
just a
really.
it's not just a life situation that genetics just created you gay and that's the way you are. It's like they're almost trying to set people up that to ask themselves maybe you should be gay. Like it's that bad.
Answer, thank God for AIDS.
Yeah. But that's another thing. Like the gay commercials for the AIDS medications. Like even that. Like who would have ever thunk 10 years ago you'd be seeing every night two gay guys kissing on TV in the commercial breaks? You know,
You know,
and it's perfectly acceptable to these folks.
very you know, drag people reading the shows. They want to drag shows and all that. It's like, I'm like, hey,
Yeah, the military was sponsoring some of those. Yeah,
you pick what you're the singer.
yeah, of course.
Okay. You saw a meme the other day. Big party a few years ago randomly ended a Dolly Parton looking contest. And she lost
I
to a drag queen.
believe it. I believe it.
I mean, how big was that, right?
Yeah. The other thing I've noticed lately that's not really along the same lines, but it's political. Um, there's no signs. There's no presidential campaign signs like there used to be. I mean, we're just a few months away from the election, and like literally, I've seen maybe like five presidential signs, like four Trumps and one Biden, and like a couple bumper stickers here and there. But it's just like, how did it become that local politics in elections are all over the place with the signs, but the national politics has forgotten about campaign signs suddenly? Like, what is going on? And I know part of it is people that support Trump just do not want the hassle of telling people that they do because they're going to get in an argument.
Cannonier, bad words, harsh words, and we're great for everything today. So I think, the conservative people, they're no bullshit people. The one time, you know, he had some, you know, his, on patio. People like would talk to his front door and yelling and screaming. The bunch of shit,
Mhm.
it's like chicken prevention. Right? Like, who gave you the right over somebody's house and like try to scream or yell at the stage and voice it? Well, what? Because you don't agree with what they do? Yeah. And that's once again where you need to be in the right. But it does that when you can keep them in the mess.
Yeah, I do remember a lot of stories last election of people stealing Trump signs, and one guy up here in Maine actually got out a paintball gun, filmed him shooting the people stealing the signs. But yeah, I mean, people are willing to trespass, break the law. It don't matter, like over some bullshit politics. That I mean, we're supposed to be a country that accepts like all ideologies and philosophies and all that, and lets people
Hey,
do their own thing.
all right.
But anyway, yeah. Well, we didn't even finish the UFC card. We didn't even finish the UFC card, but we're on the ninth fight. Nico Price. The price was wrong for me because I didn't pick him, but the price was right for him. He ended up beating Alex Morono in a really one-sided affair. Morono just was zombie fighting at one point and totally gassed out. I don't know how Price wasn't able to just knock him out, but just yeah, I could tell. Yeah, yeah, it was, yeah, worst I've ever seen. So that was a bust. That busted up like seven of my eight parlays at the end of the night. I was pissed. I almost got every other one right. You know, I got well, I did get every single winner right before that, but just not the results. Some guys I had knockout that got decision. I did get the Kevin Holland submission and the Jailton Almeida submission, but I had knockouts for guys that like Kopylov that didn't get it. But Nico Price was the big one, and so that kind of sucked. But it is what it is. You live, you learn. But anyway, Nico Price got the unanimous decision win. Looked pretty decent in there. Looked like he was obviously better trained and better conditioned for that one. Then before that, Randy Brown did what Randy Brown does, and the unanimous decision allows you Zaleski dos Santos. That was pretty good work by him. Very tactical, sort of boring, but effective. And then Roman Kopylov won a split decision over Cesar Almeida. I figured most of my parlays had Caesar winning because a lot of the experts picked him. And I knew Kopylov had a chance, but I figured it would be by knockout. So most of my parlays that I had him in were for knockouts. But yeah, that was a split decision. Kopylov edged it out. Jailton Almeida somehow injured himself, injured his leg. He got a medical suspension, but made very quick work of Alexander Romanov in their fight. Just took him down and rear naked choked him 2 minutes and 27 seconds into the fight. Made it look easy, but somehow he injured himself, so we don't know when he's going to be back. But he's probably going to need some recovery time. And then before that, Grant Dawson, heavy favorite, did what he was supposed to do, and unanimous decision. Joe Solecki. Jake Matthews also a little bit of a favorite, beating Philip Rowe, though there were a lot of experts picking Rowe for that one, so I hedged that one. I had Jake just as a money line bet in the one that went to the parlay that went all the way to the main event before it lost. And bet Baisal Haifez, he was a pretty easy decision to pick to beat Mickey Gall, and Mickey Gall looked not at his best. Basil Haifez. I don't know, but it was referenced. It was referenced in a lot of the preview videos. That's for sure. Somebody, I think one of the announcers was talking about it too. But yeah, that was funny. Aylin Perez before that in the second fight of the night beat Jocelyn Edwards in a unanimous decision. Edwards kind of fell apart late, but she was looking pretty decent in the beginning. I think she might have broken a pinky or a finger or something like that at some point. Um, but she was on the suspension list too. But Perez looked pretty decent. Edwards had a pretty big rivalry with her going in, so that was kind of interesting to see that they shook hands afterwards because they actually got into a fight at the UFC Apex, like a real fight, years ago, and it was it was almost like a side bet by the announcers as to whether they were going to hug after the fight. Aylin Perez actually was ready for an apology, ready for a kumbaya moment, and it was Jocelyn Edwards, I think, who put her hand out first, and it took a while, but Perez eventually took it, and they went down to the canvas and had their moment and hugged it out. So the feud's over, but Aylin came out victorious. And then the bite fighter, Andre Lima, got bit in his last fight, got the bite bonus. Uh, he had he had a pretty much dominant performance against Mitch Raposo, who talk about short notice. The kid was, I think, on a couple weeks' notice, and I actually hedged that bet just because I saw an interview with Mitch, and I just fell for the story because he said like he was like literally praying that something good would come to his life, and like 5 minutes later he got the call for this fight. So, and he was talking about how hard he was working, and I just kind of fell for the story. I was like, oh, it'd be so great if he could get this win, but at least one judge was on his side, even though it was kind of bogus. But Mitch should get another opportunity for sure. He definitely earned it. He showed his durability in there. He showed his heart, and even though he was mismatched, he definitely, um, showed a lot of courage doing that on such short notice. And you get him in there with a full training camp, I think he'll do better against a less formidable opponent, maybe. But anyway, so that's that. We might as well get to the Saudi card now. I was telling Tom earlier, you probably heard it, Tony, about Deontay Wilder forgetting he had a right hand. I'm sure you noticed that too. I don't know how he got through that far in that fight. The way he was not even throwing his right hand half the time. He tried to win it with his jab, and there's very few fighters who can do that. You know, like, yeah, yeah, Yeah.
Everything is like first time you ever loved
And the range thing was there too. Like I talked about last week, he just can't figure out his range.
friends. But it's not easy. You got to think fully historic power in your ranking. What makes you think not, you know, hey, the guy that's gonna put you like fully and you need to be, you're fighting a guy that's gonna be pretty much standing in front of you and trying to land his big left hand. So it's gonna be a matter of who's gonna land their, game ender. And now Zhang has the counter rifle. We saw it against Joy, and we saw it again the other night.
He reminds me of a Chinese George Foreman, except he
But
doesn't
his
do the arm
weapon
block
is
thing.
that and who's gonna land their game ender first, and can even throw it.
Yeah. I could not believe it. I was begging for it, because I bet on him. I was trying to win money, trying to scream through the TV to get his attention. Mm.
Pretty much pick Zhang.
Yeah. Well, I thought that the reach was going to do it for him, and that he had learned something from the Joseph Parker fight. Um,
You've been smirching the Rain Man.
I guess I did. I did get Daniel Dubois. I had a parlay, and he was the final leg of the parlay. I got Daniel Dubois and Willie Hutchinson, who also both won their fights. Hergovic was a tough opponent, but boy, Dubois made good on that fight. Hergovic was winning early, I guess. I didn't watch it, but I saw on the betting stats he was negative odds up until Daniel Dubois turned the corner and got the knockout. Pretty much. Yeah.
Rain Man. Favorite pony?
And then another. I think I did. And I did another parlay with Raymond Ford in it. So the big upset of the week was Raymond Ford. He lost his first fight against Nick Ball, who also came in undefeated. So that was our somebody's always got to go fight last week, one of them. And yeah, that was a split decision, but pretty close. 2 points on every card, and that was tough for Ford. That was a tough one because he was very favorite. He was a big favorite in that one. Let's see what else we had. Saturday. Okay, so on the Ford card, that was also in Saudi Arabia. We also had Hamza Shiraz knocking out Austin Williams. That was another somebody's always got to go, and that was a late one. 11th round out of 12. That was for the WBC silver middleweight title. And Dmitry Bivol. That was another part of my parlay with Wilder. I had Bivol by knockout. I had two
Yeah.
different parlays, one by knockout, one by technical decision. I did not watch it, but it was a 6 round TKO of a guy that had not been knocked out really a lot, if at all, I don't think. But yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Right. Well, I mean, I haven't seen a lot of B-Ball. I've read a lot about his fights, but it's not the same as seeing him. I've seen more of Beterbiev's fights because John Scully trains him, and he's a friend of the show. He's been on so many times. But yeah, Beterbiev, I think, um, is the more aggressive fighter, and Bivol is more of a boxer. So it's going to be a styles fight. But but I think if Bivol tries to box too much, he's going to get overwhelmed because I don't think that even bothers Beterbiev at all when he goes up against the guy who tries to be technical with him. He just kind of Rocky Marciano's the situation. He fucking clubs him down. He just follows you around and then clubs you to the death. Yeah, yeah, but it's going to be entertaining. It might go into the late rounds, but I really like Beterbiev in that one. But you don't know what kind of damage this time off is going to do either. Bivol getting the action, getting the time in the ring, and Beterbiev being off for a little while. That might throw off his game a little bit. Yep. Yep. Yeah. He's a very humble guy too. I mean, I hear a lot of stories from Scully about. Yeah. You ain't gonna have bad blood at the press conference either, because they're kind of friends. Right. All right. And Willie Hutchinson was part of one of my almost winning parlays. 17-1. I was a live bet because I noticed that the odds were going in his favor halfway through the fight, so I picked up on that. And then I added the other two that were yet to come. But he got a 12 round unanimous decision over Craig Richards for the WBC silver light heavyweight title. And of course, we had Deontay Wilder losing by TKO to Zile Zhang. And Zhang actually called out Anthony Joshua, who was ringside. And he didn't look too shocked or upset that, that Zhang won the fight, but he hasn't said yes yet to the contest. But we'll see. We'll see. That's going to be a tough call to make because I'm sure there's a lot of people lined up to fight Johnson. Joshua, I mean, Anthony Joshua. All right, so that was about it. That was the big card last Saturday. Not much else going on. There's let's see, upcoming fights. Let's see what's there. There was a press conference today on some of these YouTube-esque fights, guys like the YouTuber cards that they put together with guys that have been out of boxing for a while, coming back in to face an MMA fighter, that kind of gimmick fights. This one's going to be a little different. There's established boxers on it, and as well as two MMA fighters. Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal. This was a bad motherfucker title fight back in the day, and when they were both in MMA. And Nate Diaz lost because of a cut. So there's literally bad blood between these two. And it got worse at the press conference today. It was funny because I was meaning to watch it because I got the notification in my email that it's going to be live, 3:30 today, and then I go on to the add a tab on my Windows thing in the browser, and there's the article on the homepage about this big brawl that broke out between not the fighters but their staff, uh, their support staff there. So yeah, that was a kind of a surprise. But Nate Diaz actually kind of started it because he decided that he wasn't even going to do the face-off with Masvidal. He was just like, I've had enough. I'm leaving. And a lot of people don't know this, but the Diaz brothers both have serious anxiety disorders. And I don't know whether that has anything to do with their copious marijuana use, but they both hate press conferences. They've both gotten in trouble with the UFC in the past for skipping press conferences. So there's something about the lights and the TV cameras and all that, as long as it's a fight and they're in the cage, they're fine with, or they're in the ring, whatever goes, they're fine with it once the competition starts. But like anything like hyping themselves up, they get anxious about. They have serious anxiety. And it could be hereditary too. I mean, how else would two brothers share the same thing? I don't know what it really causes it outright, but they both definitely have it, and I can't see how it could be good for business if you have a reputation of that. Like, you've got to do the press conferences. Anyway, Daniel Jacobs is actually coming back for this card. He's going to be fighting Shane Mosley Jr. I thought it was senior at first when I read it, and then I seen the junior, and I was like, geez, how many fights does that guy even have? Um, Nowhere near the competition level. I looked at it on BoxRec. I compared the two of them earlier. Jacobs
Yeah, no, you got
Jacobs has more knockouts than Mosley has fights. So that's the first problem. The second problem is Daniel Jacobs, even though he's been out of boxing for 2 years, has not lost to anybody recently except top level competition. And at this stage, you have to say Shane Mosley Jr. is still kind of in the prospect area. Um, he's, obviously establishing a good career for himself. He's 21-4. He has beaten some decent fighters, but he's not really up there yet in the big names. Um, and it's going to take some time. He's going to have to beat guys like Daniel Jacobs to get there, but I just don't think he has a chance. This one, I think, is going to be a sweet unanimous decision, easy work for Daniel Jacobs or a knockout. Um, I got to check, though, on Mosley, see how many knockouts he's had. He's never been knocked out himself, but he has 12 knockouts to his credit, which is basically a little over half of his wins. Whereas you got Jacobs, only 7 of his wins haven't been knockouts. So, yeah, I don't think he's faced anybody that really was capable of knocking him out yet. I'm trying to see the best record he's fought is a guy named Brandon Adams, 20-2, and he lost to him back in 2018 for a unanimous decision. But yeah, this is kind of crazy they would make this fight. I would understand Shane Mosley Sr. if he was coming back out of retirement for it, but Junior, no, no. And I was kind of surprised today when I realized that BoxRec, now I don't know if they always had this, but when I looked up Daniel Jacobs, there were 2 entries, one for his pro career and one for his amateur career. So they have all his amateur fights on BoxRec now. And I did not know he had, in his amateur career, he fought Sean Porter a bunch of times, former guest of ours. And he also fought another guest of ours, none other than Boyd Melson, back in 2005 in Colorado Springs, where I used to go to school. The national championship semifinal. And if you're wondering how Jacobs did against Sean Porter, he only lost once in the amateurs. Only once. I think he won like 3 out of 4. So good work there. But yeah, I like Jacobs in that one. That was going to be an easy bet. I'll probably do by knockout, even though Mosley has not been knocked out yet. He's due. Yes, you could say that. Let's see. All right. So schedule. Yes. So let's see if we got anything coming up tomorrow. We got the WBO Asia Pacific Super Lightweight title on the line. Believe it or not, between two Asians. Dicey, right? We got Daishi Nagata, 19-3-2 against Young Wook Kim, 6-0. And then there's a single fight on this card, supposedly worthy of 2 stars. That's going to be on UFC Fight Pass. Callum Walsh, undefeated at 10-0, fighting Carlos Ortiz Cervantes, who's 14-5 at super welterweight for the WBC Continental Americas super welterweight title. And we go to Hollywood for the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino card, featuring Michael Hunter, 22-1-2, and Cassius Chaney, 23-1 at heavyweight. That should be a good one. And we got a couple obscure titles on the line and an undefeated record on each side in this one. Antonio Perez, 9-0, and Antonio Williams, 16-0-1. And I'm betting on Antonio. For sure. All right. And then Ian Green, 18-2, fighting Roy Barringer, 10-4 at middleweight. And this must be the Don King card. I've gotten some press releases on this, but I haven't published them on the site yet. Adrian Broner is on there. That's why. I mean, I know he's signed with Don King. Yeah. Yep. Adrian Broner, 35-4-1. Blair Cobbs is his opponent, 16-1-1 at welterweight. Might seem like a mismatch, because of Broner's experience, but Blair Cobb's pretty tough guy. So, and Broner has not looked spectacular recently. So, Blair Cobb's his last win was against Maurice Hooker, 27-2-3. That was a unanimous decision win back in 2022. So he hasn't fought in a couple years. He's got a KO loss to Alexis Roca, 18-1. It came before that, but it's been all wins otherwise and one draw. He's got a pretty good career record. He's definitely less experienced. And the last guy that Broner lost to was Manny Pacquiao back in 2019. And he last fought last year, last June. So it's been about a year for Broner. He's been kind of facing lesser opponents since Manny Pacquiao. Well, not kind of, definitely. Uh, so he's kind of going. Well, he is going down since his last fight in number of wins. The last guy he fought was Bill Hutchinson. He was 20-2 with 4 draws, and this guy has only got 16 wins. So you'd think his quality of opposition would be going up, but I don't think Don King has as much pull as he used to as far as organizing fights. So that might be one of the reasons. It might also be a tune-up fight situation too, because he probably needs it. He needs to build some momentum. All right, let's see what else we got on Saturday. Pietro Rossetti. Here's a title. This has got to be an Italian title, because I think this is in Italy. Akram Iowina, 10-1, fighting Pietro Rossetti. He's 18-2 at welterweight, fighting for the Federazione Pugilistica Italiana welterweight title. How about that? We ought to just get a replica for you, Tony, so you can have it. You'd be proud to own that title, wouldn't you? Federazione Pugilistica Italiana. You gotta say it with an Italian accent. All right. Let's see what else worth talking about. The cornflake is back. And Bally's Atlantic City. He retired a few years ago, and you wouldn't know it. He's come right back to the sport, and he's been doing well. He hasn't been really, uh, looking for world title opportunities, but he's got one actually here, um, against a guy that I've never heard of, but doesn't mean he's not good. Thomas is ranked number 90 at middleweight. He's fighting number 60, Juan Carlos Abreu, who's 26, 7 and 1. Definitely a guy you can beat. The title on the line, the WBA Gold World Middleweight title. So I've heard of the silver, but I have not heard of the gold title. Yeah, and Thomas comes in at 37, 5 and 1, and has not lost recently. Well, on his actual record, but I see the all green dots next to his name on the matchup. And we got a fight in Albuquerque between Jason Sanchez, 16 and 5, and Abel Mendoza, 40 and 0. I guess even though they call that a two-star fight, we have to bring back our mismatch of the week for that one, I think. That's bad. 40 and 0 against 16 and 5. Yikes. And then Saturday from Madison Square Garden, there is a pretty decent ESPN card. Maybe on ESPN and ESPN Plus. Xander Zayas, 18 and 0, looking for win number 19 against Patrick Teixeira, 34 and 4 at super welterweight. Then we got another guy that sounds like he should be a butler instead of a boxer. Bruce Carrington. Bruce Carrington. 11 and 0, fighting Brian with a Y, D. Gracia, who is 29, 3 and 1 at featherweight. We got Delonte Johnson, undefeated, 12 and 0, fighting Tariq Zana, 13, 1 and 1 at super lightweight. Yeah, that's about it on that card for the good stuff. Let's see. And here's a crazy name for a boxer. Charlemagne Metonyakpon, who is 14 and 1, fighting Marco Filippi, 9 and 0 for the WBC Mediterranean super lightweight title. And then we got fights in Moscow on Monday. Just another Moscow Monday. Umar Salamov, 28 and 2, fighting Obina Joseph Matthew, who's 23 and 0. That's a cruiserweight fight, another cruiserweight support fight there. Also sounds like a little bit of a mismatch. Ruslan Fafer, 29 and 4 with one draw, fighting Vitaly Kudakov, who is 6 and 1 at cruiserweight. And let's see, this is another fight card on Thursday. Nothing too spectacular on that one. No Jesus fight of the week. Can't find one here. We gotta go down to 1-star fights to find the Jesus fight of the week. All right. We do have a lot of upcoming MMA action, but I also have some stories stacked up here. A lot of boxing stuff. Clarissa Shields. Have you heard about this, Tony? She's talking about, when they're talking about it, she's scheduled now to move up to heavyweight. Believe that? Heavyweight. Moving up 2 weight classes to challenge women's WBC heavyweight champion Vanessa LePage Joannis on July 27th. Well, yeah, she has been calling for a matchup with Keith Thurman. She she thinks she can take Keith Thurman. Yeah. Well, she obviously has been trying to bite off more than she can chew in the MMA world. She looked horrible in her last fight there. Um, she was really lucky to not get knocked out. She got so tired and she just was horrible with the grappling. She just looked like ass. But that's another storyline going on this week because one of her boxing opponents is following her to the PFL, and she's been promised a rematch in the cage with Claressa. So that's an interesting one, especially considering our history talking about the MMA versus boxing debate and how there's so much crossover now since that topic first was brought up, and nobody ever really crossed over. Now it's happening everywhere. Um, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. But yeah, this one supposedly it's going to be in July, and she's also going to defend. Oh no, she already did defend. She defended her middleweight title last year at the same place. So it's going to be at the same arena as her last title defense at her natural weight. Not about natural, but usual, I should say. Also, find a $1.2 million in your change drawer, and you might be able to buy Muhammad Ali's childhood home. And actually, you could get three houses for that price because there's a museum set up there now. And it's kind of interesting. I never knew this, but these guys from Vegas got together. One of them's recently died, which is why they're selling it. But they had this big plan to convert not only the house into a museum, but they wanted it to look exactly like it was when Muhammad Ali was growing up there. So they used all these pictures and documentary evidence of what he had there in the house, and they duplicated it. And they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars doing it. And they even made the house pink, which I guess was the same color it was when Muhammad was growing up there. Uh, Crazy. I never knew, number one, they made a museum out of his childhood home, but number two, I never knew he grew up in a pink house. You'd never guess that if you had to. No. But yeah, it's going to be in Louisville, which I guess they pronounce Louisville down there. I found that out today. But that's just because the UFC card's there also this weekend. So maybe one of them UFC fighters can pony up the dough, or Dana White might be able to buy it. I'm not sure how in love with Muhammad Ali is. I know he likes Mike Tyson probably a lot more, but he probably has met Muhammad Ali before he died. So yeah, that would be right up his alley. He probably just bulldoze everything. That's the way he operates. Build $1 million, $2 million mansion for himself. But anyway, so the story goes it's a two-bedroom, one-bathroom house in Louisville converted into a museum. And the house is on the market along with two neighboring homes. One was actually turned into a welcome center and gift shop. The other was meant to become a short-term rental. So it's 1.5 mil for all three properties. And the best possible result for the sellers would be finding somebody that will maintain the home as a museum, um, according to the seller. He said this is part of Americana. And guess what? He's a Philadelphia attorney and former Pennsylvania state boxing commissioner. Guy named, what's his name here? They just have his last name. George Bocchetto. Did you ever hear of him, Tony?
I have.
So there you go. You got an in. You know his name. You can get a loan. So yeah, they you walk into this house, you're going back to 1955, he says, and you're going to be in the middle of the Clay family home. So they replicated the furnishings, appliances, artwork, and of course the color of the outside. And the museum has videos focused on the story of his upbringing, not really so much about his boxing career. Um, and did you know how Ali actually got started in boxing? Yeah, yeah, Tom got it right. He got his bike stolen, and unlike Mike Tyson, who got into fighting because somebody bit a head off one of his pigeons, it didn't cause the fight that started him in the sport, having his bicycle stolen. He never actually confronted the thief. But when he went to report it, he ended up meeting a guy named Joe Martin, who was a boxing coach and a police officer at a local. He was a boxing coach at a local gym. And Ali told the guy he wanted to beat up the guy that stole his bike, but they never found the thief nor the bike, and Ali just ended up in the gym. So the rest is history, literally. And so Ali actually lived at the house when he left for the 1960 Olympics, returned with the gold medal, and he also was brought by there in the hearse at the day of his burial, on the day of his burial. And that actually brought a lot of attention to the museum, but since then it's run into financial troubles and closed less than 2 years after opening. So anyway, it's a 1,200 square foot house, and there were potential plans to try to move it to Las Vegas, Philadelphia, and even Saudi Arabia, but they were all turned down. Bochetto said, I wouldn't do that because it's an important piece of Louisville history, Kentucky history, and I think it needs to stay right where it is. So the guy from Las Vegas was a guy named Jared Weiss, who's a real estate investor. They bought it in 2012 for 70 grand with plans to restore it. And Weiss and Bochetto worked together. Um, they were both huge Ali fans. They donated, or they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on the restoration and also purchased those two neighboring homes. They financed a documentary, subsidized museum operations, and incurred expenses for all three properties. So Weiss died, and his wife is now the project's co-owner. Um, but they basically are really looking for a specific buyer, somebody with the marketing and operational know-how to make the museum a success. So there it is. Get it while it lasts. Surprised they would even have trouble. They would even have to do a story to sell that, but it should be already sold. I think that would go quick. Anyway, Savannah Marshall was the girl I'm talking about. Was talking about going over to PFL. She is not only debuting in PFL this weekend, but she will be headlining the PFL card. See where it is here. From England, Newcastle, England. She is 0-0 debuting against a girl named Morella Vargas, who is 1-2. And it's amazing to me how fast they work on this stuff when somebody's a main event. But you've got some guys that have records of like 12-2, and they don't even have a Sherdog picture, of their face, let alone their whole fight uniform and the fight gloves on. She's got the MMA gloves on and everything. So yeah, that's crazy. Morella Vargas, I don't know a lot about her, but usually when they put somebody in against a 1-2 fighter to start their career, it's kind of an opponent situation. They expect Savannah to win. They want her to win. That's the idea. But I think when they do that with a girl who's coming over from boxing, it's even more so. It's, you know, going to be a walkover. This girl has one knockout to her credit in her one win. That was in her pro debut, and it just took her 12 seconds against Ariel Ribeiro. So if Savannah survives the first 12 seconds, she's fine. But the 1 and 2, the two losses are against the same person too. Once by rear naked choke, and the other time by TKO. So she has been knocked out, and she does have a knockout. But I think Savannah's going to make easy work of that one. Although she has said that training has been way harder than she expected, and it's a challenge and also kind of an adventure for her. They call her. They call her, or she calls herself. I'm not sure. The Silent Assassin, and she's from County Durham in the United Kingdom. So she's going to be home as well, basically. She's 13-1 in boxing with 10 knockouts, and she lost a very competitive unanimous decision to Shields in October of 2022 for the undisputed middleweight title. Followed up that fight by beating Franchon Cruz Dezern in a majority decision for the undisputed super middleweight crown in July. She said, actually, she had some interesting quotes in here that I've never thought of. Because, we've always talked about in the boxing versus MMA debate, yeah, MMA is great and it's a growing sport and it's, becoming mainstream, but it still hasn't caught up in pay to boxing in a lot of cases, especially the big name guys. Maybe at the lower ranks, the guys that are just coming up are making more than the guys that are just coming up in boxing. But Savannah had some interesting stuff to say about that. She also said something about the money not being there, but the opportunities are there, is what she said. And she said it was just the opportunity from PFL to fight in MMA, something I hadn't considered before. I was supposed to box in March, and the PFL came to me for June 8th, along with a potential matchup against Claressa Shields in the cage. That's what got me excited. Nothing is promised. It could happen. There is potential there, hopefully. I'm in a catch-22. There is really no one for me to fight in boxing aside from rematches with Franchon and Claressa. So the PFL opportunity is coming at the perfect time. I can give it a go with PFL and see where it goes. And basically, it's been a hard transition for her, mostly due to the 5-minute rounds. But she's got a great trainer, none other than UFC heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall, who is great at knocking people out, and she believes she also has a great knockout punch for MMA. She said, to be honest, I massively underestimated how hard it would be to transition. I went in there thinking it would be a piece of cake, but it has not been the case at all. It has been a total overhaul for me. I've been boxing for over 20 years, so it's new, exciting, and refreshing. I really enjoyed it. She's 33 years old, has been professionally boxing for 7 years, and she says obviously that it's still her first love. He says, I think we're going to have to wait and see what happens June 8th. It could be, wow, this is me now, and we're going to have a good go at this, or it will be, God, this isn't for me. And here's where she gets into the opportunity rather than financial windfall. Financially, it's not a lucrative opportunity. It was just the opportunity to try something new. Don't get me wrong, the PFL are looking after me. It's just the opportunities that are coming off the back of it. I think MMA is bigger than boxing worldwide, and it's sad to say, I really do. The opportunities are, but I don't know if it's bigger than boxing. I can't really say that. I mean, there's certain countries that haven't even regulated MMA yet, never mind sanctioned it. So I think she's misinformed on that one. But it's an interesting story. I never thought about, that possibility. Um, with the PFL, it's a different story too, because um, PFL and Bellator have always had that reputation of allowing fighters to pursue other opportunities outside the cage and having open contracts. So that makes more sense when you're talking about the PFL or Bellator than if you're talking about the UFC, because the only opportunity you're going to get from the UFC is to fight for the UFC, and then even then you can only have so many sponsors, and you can't really get a lot out of those sponsors where they're going to get their name on TV anymore, unless they pay the UFC as well. So there's that. Anyway, so the rest of the PFL card, we have Kane Musa, 14-6 at lightweight against Dylan Tuke, 7-4. Jack Grant, 19-8 welterweight against Charlie Leary, 17-13-1. Lewis McGrillen Evans, 7-1, fighting Matisse Zaharov, who's 6-2. Dean Garnett, 12-2 at bantamweight, fighting Aiton DePape, who is 12-4. 10th fight of the night, Chanel Dyer, 4-0 at flyweight, fighting Miriam Torchinova, who is 8-2. And then Ibrahimov, 6-0 at featherweight, fighting Josh Reed, 13-8. Dominique Wooding in a bantamweight fight, 9-6, fighting Luke Shanks, who's 10-4. Lizzie Gevers, 4-1 at flyweight, fighting Carolina Wojcik, who is 11-5. Mark Ewan before that in the 6 fight of the night, 5-0 at lightweight, fighting Claudia Placella, 3-2. Kursed Kakarov, 12-1 at bantamweight, fighting Thomas Gronval, 12-6 with one draw. And then Valentina Scatizzi, 2-2 at flyweight, fighting Marie Loiseau, who is 6-4. And then Ben Hulis, who is 3-0 at featherweight, fighting Nikola Ivanovic, who probably should get the clue. He is 0-7 at featherweight. He probably should go to boxing. Well, Savannah comes to MMA because MMA is definitely not his sport. 0-7. I've never seen that on a professional card at this level. That's kind of crazy. All right, so Alexander Luster also on the card. He's the second fight of the night, 7-1, fighting Alperin Karabulut. And then Dee Begley, 4-5 at flyweight, fighting Paulina Wizinuska, who is 2-0. That wraps that card up. That's going to be in England, so probably some weird timing on that one. It's not going to be like the UFC where they just do it at American times. All right, what else we got here? So our next thing, I guess, is let's see, UFC. Jared Cannonier, the Killer Gorilla, they call him. He is 17-6, 10 knockouts, 2 submission wins, and 5 decisions. Has lost 4 decisions and 2 knockouts. But nothing, no knockouts recently. His last knockout loss was in 2018 to a guy who's also on this card, Dominic Reyes, who a lot of people were kind of playing psychologist with him in the expert picks videos that I watched this week, earlier today, actually. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They lost his edge. Yeah, it was funny because on the John McCarthy and Josh Thompson podcast, they they, they talked about a movie reference that it reminded them of the story of Dominic Reyes. They cited the Ace Ventura Pet Detective movie where the guy was doing the laces out thing with Dan Marino. You remember that? He was haunted. Yeah, he was haunted by the game where he didn't put the laces out and the guy missed the field goal. Well, I'd never known that was actually based on reality, a real story. But it wasn't the Dolphins; it was the Buffalo Bills in their first Super Bowl loss, I believe. And yeah, John McCarthy was the one that pointed that out, and I was like, "Oh no, shit! I thought that was all faked." So that was funny. But yeah, this kind of like that situation. You'd never get it out of your head, I guess, that bad performance. He was streaking right up until then, and a lot of people say he won that fight, and just has not done so well since. But anyway, getting back to Cannonier, he is fighting Nassourdine Imavov. And if you do a little common opponent math, you might think that Cannonier has this hands down because he's beaten Sean Strickland, and Imavov lost to Sean Strickland this last year in January. Uh, and his last win actually was a majority decision win over Roman Dolidze for Imavov. But he really just has not faced and beaten the kind of caliber opponents that Cannonier has. And also, Cannonier has been with the UFC a lot longer. Um, but anyway, Marvin Vettori and Sean Strickland were the last 2 guys he beat. Strickland win was a split decision, but still a 5 round fight, and got the win. So that's very impressive. Marvin Vittori, we talked about him a little bit earlier. Very tough opponent. That was also a 5 round main event fight. Um, and he's fought some titleists too. Israel Adesanya, Robert Whitaker, Jan Blachowicz. Those were his losses. Those are the guys he's lost to. Glover Teixeira. Really, the only guy I've never heard of is Sean Jordan, and that was his first UFC fight. Lost by knockout in 3 minutes, under 3 minutes. But no slouches for for the losses on his record. You know, always top caliber opponents in recent years, and I just don't see Imavov having the game plan to beat him. So I got to go with Cannonier on that. I don't think he's going to get the knockout though. Last knockout was a few years ago, 2022. Um, but I like him by decision. So the last two guys he knocked out were Derek Brunson and Jack Hermanson. And so if he is going to get the knockout, it's probably going to be the second round because he knocked both of those guys out in the second round. So he's got 3 of 4 in the second round. Guess who he knocked out in the first round? I didn't realize this was Anderson Silva back in 2019. I don't remember that fight. That was from a leg kick, TKO. 4 minutes and 49 seconds into the first. So that's kind of funny. So Anderson Silva has lost a fight by getting kicked in the leg and kicking someone in the leg. Jeez, nuts. That's a Trivial Pursuit question right there. All right, then we have in the co-main event Dominic Reyes, we were just talking about, against Dustin Jacoby. And this seems like more of a tune-up fight, if there ever was one in the UFC. Although Dustin Jacoby, don't let his 8 losses fool you. He is very tough. He can knock guys out too. His last win was a knockout in the first round against Kennedy and Chekwu, but not nearly the level of experience as Dominic Reyes. So, uh, yeah, he's kind of had a rough go about it. He's lost 3 decisions around that one knockout win, and before that, he was on a pretty good win streak. From his start in the promotion back in 2020, sorry, up to 2022 with his win over Dawoon Jung. That was also a first round knockout. Uh, so yeah, Jacoby very possibly could beat Reyes, but this kind of not only sounds like a tune-up fight for Reyes, but it also is almost like a loser leaves town type of situation because Reyes, 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row he's lost. But definitely seems like every 3 of those 4 losses were against really, really top level guys, and Ryan Spann was his last loss. He was not really top level, but very capable. Got a lot of experience himself against big names. But yeah, somebody's gonna get a win here, and this is one that's kind of tough to predict as far as how it's gonna go. I mean, if you had to do it by pattern, you want to recognize a pattern. I see Dustin Jacoby. He's got a lot of first round knockouts. So, yeah, if he's going to knock him out, it's probably going to be in the first round. But Dominic Reyes has actually lost both of his all of his last 3 by knockout. So I was going to say, I thought he had less. I thought he hadn't lost by knockout in quite a while, but no, not the case. The decision against John Jones in 2020 was followed by getting knocked out by Jan Blachowicz, then Jerry Prochaska, then Ryan Spann. So I guess I would go under 2.5 on this one, or under if that's available, or within the distance. TKO. I would say. Pretty safe bet. So yeah, Dominic Reyes is due, but obviously Jacoby is capable of that knockout, and that's where his last win comes. He's got a more recent win than Reyes, so this Reyes really has transformed himself. He's either gonna win dominantly or lose and probably retire. I would say, jeez. Not a lot of people survive in the UFC with 5 straight losses. You know, yeah. Bigger names tend to do better in that regard. Like, no matter what the contract says, if they're a big enough name and they're a draw, obviously he's a draw because he's in the co-main event. They'll get the benefit of the doubt. But if you're a prospect with even 3 losses in a row, usually you're gone. So he's lucky to have the name recognition. And we got Raul Rosas Jr. Second time around. He was supposed to fight Ricky Tercios a long time ago. Did not happen. Now it's happening, and Rosas Jr. seems to be the favorite, but at least Josh the Punk Thompson was liking Ricky, and he thinks that he's going to do a lot of takedown defense and try to stay away from the submission. But everybody who likes Rosas likes him by submission, so I guess that's the play this week. Rosas by submission. And then we got Bruno Ferreira, who is 11-1, fighting Dustin Stoltzfus, who's 15-5. And this one, from what I've listened to on the analysis, looks like either it's going to be Ferreira by knockout or Stoltzfus by decision. So I like that on an alternate choice bet, which you can do. Um, alternate, as long as it's an alternate method of winning. You can't do Bruno Ferreira by decision or Stoltzfus by decision. You can't do that. So I like knockout for Ferreira or decision for Stoltzfus. And then we've got a couple tough guys at middleweight. Julian, the Cuban Missile Crisis Marquez. That's his actual nickname. It's one of the craziest nicknames there is. Fighting Zachary Reese, who is 6-1. Marquez 9-4. And that one, a lot of people like Julian. A lot of people like Reese. Reese really doesn't have the kind of experience you'd expect for a guy in the middle of a card on the UFC stage, but I don't know whether he's from Louisville or what. He's coming off an armbar submission on Dana White's Contender Series, and before that, it was all feeder leagues. Fury FC and Peak Fighting was his first organization. And he stormed right through the feeder leagues and into the Dana White's Contender Series. And he likes ending things in the first round. So if he wins, probably want to go submission or TKO because he's got 2 submissions and 4 TKOs to start his career. His last loss was just last December. He lost to Cody Brundage in his traditional UFC debut at UFC on ESPN 52. Sorry. And that was a knockout loss by slam and punches. Ugh, I don't remember that one. 1 minute and 49 seconds into the first. So he's either going to lose in the first or win in the first, I guess. That's a tough one to call. The Cuban Missile Crisis is a knockout artist for all intents and purposes. Does not like to go to decision. He's never gone to decision in a win. He's 6-3, 2 decision losses, 2 knockout losses. And both of those knockout losses were in his last 2 fights. So this was a good matchup. I like Marquez because of the experience factor. And he does have some first round knockouts of his own, but not in the UFC yet. Still waiting for his first round knockout there. Except he was on the other side of one. Robocop knocked him out on the Qatar versus Emmett fight card back in 2022. So yeah, I'd say Marquez by submission or to knockout or submission on that one. Just on the experience. And he needs a win desperately. All right, so then we have Miguel Baeza against Punahele Soriano. A lot of people like Baeza on this one. He's got the better record. He's 10-3. Punahele is 9-4. I think I think that's a to go the distance fight. I wouldn't. Sure thing. Thanks for stopping by. All right. So we'll run through the rest of these and call it a night ourselves. Got Thiago Moises back in action, 18-7 at lightweight, fighting Ludovic Klein, 21-4-1. We got Charlie Radke at welterweight, 9-3, fighting Carlos Prates, who's 18-6. And then one that I listened to the analysis earlier here, and it's kind of interesting because this is the one that the guy didn't even really want to pick anyone, but he liked Brad Katona if you had to pick somebody. Um, so that made me think that's probably a good to go the distance bet because both guys are pretty much known for going to decision. Andrea Lee and Montana De La Rosa. Before that, at flyweight, Lee is 13-9. De La Rosa is 12-9 with one draw. And then John Castaneda at bantamweight, 21-6 against Daniel Marcos, undefeated at 15-0. And of course, Marcos is the analyst favorite there. I believe it's a rematch between Andrea Lee and Montana De La Rosa. I think. I want to say it is. Let me check before I say that. No, it isn't. But yeah, this it's gonna be tough for Lee. She has lost 4 in a row, so she definitely badly needs this one. And so does Montana De La Rosa because she's lost 3 in a row. So that's a tough one. Probably gonna go to decision again though. 3 decision wins for De La Rosa. She does have 8 submissions though, so that's a good submission or decision bet for her, I think. But Andrea Lee is definitely capable. Then we got Eduarda, sorry, Mora. It's a female fighter, strawweight, 10-0, fighting Denise Gomez, who's 8-3 at strawweight. I like the undefeated girl in that one, Mara. And then Cody Stammen and Taylor Lapilus. Cody's got more wins than Lapilus, 21-6 with one draw. At bantamweight, Lapilus 19-4, but the experts are saying Lapilus in that one. And then Rayanne Dos Santos is the favorite at strawweight. She's 14-7 to lead off the night against Pooja Tomar, 8-4. And she is one of the best fighters from the country of India. But there are also not a lot of fighters from India in the UFC. So she's probably going to lose this one. Anyway, so that's about it for us. Got any thoughts on the main event or the co-main event as far as your crystal ball there, Tom? Yep. All right. Well, I'll try to bring home some money. Hopefully, I got some good news next week when I win some 6-figure. No, probably not. But I'd be happy with $1,000. It's been a long time since I won anything like that. I think it's like a few months. I won a big parlay, like $1,400. That was my biggest win over the last few months. But it's been $100 here, $100 there since then. Just about it. But till next week, I guess that's it for us. Signing off. Yes, sir. Will do. Adios.